Too many people don't understand that digital nomading is not vacation. It is quite difficult. And here's what I wish someone had told me before I went on my voyage, which I don't regret at all, but which other people need to understand isn't a cakewalk and it isn't 2 years of vacation. For context, I traveled through North and South America for 2 years, going from Canada to Mexico to Peru, Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, Austin, Texas, and then back up to Canada before doing it all over again for a second year. It was an amazing trip and a great opportunity to learn about different cultures and about who I am. But that being said, it wasn't easy. It was some of the most difficult times in my life that I experienced. And I want to share what those risks or dangers or difficult experiences were, so that you have a better understanding that when you see these people posting beautiful photos in beautiful places, it's not all beauty. There are dark sides to it. So let's get into it. The first dark side to digital nomading is the isolation, which is different from loneliness. Loneliness is when you feel like you don't have any friends and you want to go hang out with people and connect with people more deeply. I had and made a ton of friends in all of the different countries that I visited. It isn't loneliness. Isolation is different. Isolation is the sense that you don't matter, and that if you were to drop dead, that not many people would notice because you don't have that much of a mark in the world. That's what isolation is. And in fact, you can also make this into a test. If you were to die, how long would it take before other people would notice? The shorter amount of time it takes, the more important you are in the world and in other people's lives. And I think this because the meaning that comes in your life comes from the responsibility that you take on and the relationships that you have. But when you are changing countries every 3 months, there isn't as much of an opportunity to take on a lot of responsibility in your community or develop and deepen relationships with the people that you've met and who you know in these communities. And as a result, digital nomading can feel very isolating because you aren't tethered into a community that you can contribute to and really invest in, and likewise for other people to invest in a relationship with you. It almost feels as if you are preparing yourself to die when you go through leaving your home, and then as if you're walking through Hades when you actually do go traveling through different parts of the world, because you say your goodbyes and then everyone who you used to know kind of forgets about you and you just exist as a memory in their minds. So isolation is one dark side of digital nomading. Another one is personality changes. This is something that different people experience to different rates, but it's something I felt strongly because I am someone who can change pretty easily. When I was in Canada, I think the adjectives that people would use to describe me would be smart and articulate and knowledgeable and friendly. But those are adjectives that come from people's interaction with me based on what I did with them. When you go to a different country and you don't speak the language and you don't know much about the place, you're not going to be the same person because other people interact with you differently. In Argentina, for example, I wasn't fluent in Spanish enough to have a strong personality that people could identify. I wasn't able to be smart and articulate because I just didn't have enough of a command of Spanish to be able to express myself and exactly how I felt and what I thought in conversation. So I went from being smart and articulate to stupid and nice because you have to you have to use simpler words, and as a result of that, people assume that you're not as smart as you actually are, and that is what it is. So your personality is something that is socially constructed as well as something that you define individually. But if you interact with people who only see a certain slice of you because of language limitations or because you only see each other in a certain context like jiu-jitsu, then they're going to think that you are someone who you are truly not, and that's going to grate on your personality. The third dark side to digital nomading is that you will probably lose skills in your native language, your speaking skills, your writing skills, your listening skills even. That's something that I noticed because when I was speaking in Spanish with my broken grammar all the time, that started to transfer over into my English as well. And that was painful. It has gotten to the point now where I judge myself before using prepositions and prepositional phrases because I don't know if I'm going into the bathroom or onto the bathroom, just because different languages use prepositions differently. Spanish uses different prepositions. And that's tough because, again, you start to feel more stupid. And you may learn how Spanish speakers use prepositions, but you may not have been taught how to use prepositions in English because the education system assumes that as a native language speaker, you don't need to learn this. You just pick it up from your parents and from the people around you all the time. So you're going to lose your native language skills, and they'll get weaker if you don't get to practice your native language with native speakers as well. And I started noticing that the grammar mistakes that Spanish speakers would make when speaking with me were mistakes that I started to adopt because I subconsciously thought that they were correct. So that was another thing. The next dark side to digital nomading is stress. There's the language stress that comes, and then there's other things like medical stress. The language stress comes from things happening in a conversation that you didn't expect and that you don't have the words for. For example, if you go to McDonald's, you might be fine ordering a ice cream from the counter, and then as long as the person on the other side of the counter follows the script that you are aware of, you're fine. But things get really complex when a manager comes up and starts speaking to you in Spanish about, well, you don't know. You have to strain your ears to really understand, to attempt to understand what it is that they're talking about. They might be saying the ice cream maker is broken. They might be saying your credit card has been denied and we're calling the cops, but they don't change the tone of the voice can only tell you so much. And when they start throwing in these words that you don't understand, it's extremely stressful because you're trying your best to understand what they're saying. And sometimes you only get 60% of the way there. So that's stressful. And then there's also medical stress. Twice now, I would get off the plane after flying from one country to another, and I would find that my knee had swollen up and was stiff. And of course that means straight to the hospital. But then you have to make these decisions. Which hospital should I go to? How much would it cost? Are there any bad reviews? Will insurance cover it? All of these things that I, as a Canadian, don't have to think about because we have public health care. That's difficult too. You're always worried that you're not going to make the right decision, or you may have to wait too long, or you may have overpaid. All of that. So those are two sources of stress, and I'm sure there's other sources that I can think of, but there is a cost to not being at home in a society that isn't yours. And then finally, the final dark side of digital nomading would be the homesickness. This is something that I think everyone can relate with. You miss your friends because they hold a special place in your heart. Like for me, it was the people I trained with at jiu-jitsu who I really missed because they're so special. And the culture that we have in our home gym at Wiley Jiu-Jitsu in Calgary, shout out, is unlike any other gym I've been to in the world. And I've visited like 25 to 30 gyms by now. And it's so much so that, whenever Bad Bunny's song Debí tirar más fotos, I should have taken more photos, comes onto the radio, I get emotional because that was the song that was running in my head every time I got injured at jiu-jitsu and thought, oh man, I wish I was back home in Calgary where injuries are less likely. I did actually end up going back to Calgary, and I got injured in Calgary too. So it wasn't a jiu-jitsu thing. I think it was just a me thing. But you miss your friends, you miss the food. Like, I can't tell you how many times I wanted to eat butter chicken in Argentina or Brazil, but they don't have it because no Indians ever decided to immigrate to Argentina or Brazil. Canadian food is really good, including butter chicken, and sometimes you can only find it in certain places because certain places have certain immigrants. And I really miss the diversity. I missed the diversity of food that there was in Canada. Even Austin, while I was there, I was craving Vietnamese food, and they don't have a Vietnamese restaurant, which was quite frustrating. So you miss your friends, you miss the food, and you also miss things that you take for granted, but you didn't realize you were taking for granted. I like to go into a park with my iPad or ebook reader and just sit there for like 4 hours on a Saturday, basking in the shade while the breeze goes through your fingertips, and you hear the sound of the breeze and the leaves rustling, and you just take in the depths of the book that you're reading just for fun, just to relax. You cannot do that in Argentina or Brazil, because you're always aware that someone might come over with a gun or a knife and tell you to hand over your iPad so that they can go and sell it and make a month's worth of salary, let's say, in one heist. Things like that are things that I took for granted in Canada that I didn't even realize until I went to these other countries. So you're just going to miss certain things from home, and there's no real cure for that except for going back home. So when I did go back to Calgary after burning out from traveling for 2 years, I tried to be grateful every time I stepped onto the mats at my home jiu-jitsu gym. I tried to be grateful with every conversation I had with friends. I tried to be grateful when I enjoyed the food that I was eating there, and to be grateful when I would sit out on a bench and read for a couple of hours on the weekend, because these are privileges and experiences that you will not get anywhere else oftentimes, and you have to appreciate them while they are there with you. So I think that's a good summary of the dark sides of digital nomading that no one tells you about, but which are out there. So if there is something that I will say, it's that you should appreciate the opportunities out there that give you meaning in your life. And those would be primarily your family and your friends, the relationships that you've built, the responsibilities that you have. They might seem like a drag sometimes, and there might be friction, but if you remove all of those from your life, I think it's less rich than you having them. So take care of your loved ones, appreciate them, make them happy, and don't think that digital nomading is all sunshine and rainbows. Thanks for watching. And subscribe if you like this video.